Good morning, friends. Welcome to Gyan channel. Today we will discuss about fields of translation. In this, we will cover various fields of translation, semantic translation categories, lexical ambiguities, words and complex structures, translation for print media, and translation in the era of digital revolution. So let's begin the class. First of all, what are the fields of translation? So, first of all, literary translation. The name is pretty self explanatory. It refers to the translation of literary works like stories, novels, poems, and plays. It is often considered the highest form of translation because a literary translation is much more than mere conveying of the meaning and context of the document in the source language into the target language. It involves incorporating the appropriate cultural nuances, translating humor, feelings, emotions, and other subtle elements of a particular work. Many literatures believe that it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to translate works of literature, especially poetry. Some examples or situations that could be very difficult are rhyming words, punctuations, idioms, anagrams, and so on. Often there are no appropriate translation in the target language and the nuance is lost. Next is legal translation. Legal translation is one of the most complex translations. Involves birth certificate translation, marriage certificate translations, translating contracts, agreements, treaties, memorandums, wills, and so on. A good translation needs to understand the various underlying context of the documents and that of the two regions or countries for which the documents are intended, the socio-cultural aspects and the politico-legal aspects as well. They would then need to translate it in a manner that the target audience easily grasps the text. Even if one is familiar with the cultures and other aspects and are highly skilled at translation, one may need to consult legal professionals so as to ensure that the legal translation is completely error free. Next is technical translation. Technical translation involves any technical content that needs to be translated, such as user guides, manuals, online help text, instruction booklets, training materials, videos, marketing materials for technical fields like manufacturing, science, or engineering. All of this comes in the ambit of technical translation. Formatting is an important aspect where the translation of technical content is concerned, as desktop publishing is often required for it. The screenshots and even suitable graphics have to be edited to make it for the target languages. Using a content management system or CMS will help to keep the cost down. When choosing a translator, it is essential to check how well versed they are with the terminology and jargons used in the specific industry. If they are not as familiar with that stuff but they are proficient in the translation, it would make sense to provide training for them to familiarize with them with the industry in general and business in particular. As diverse as the types of translations are, so the different types of translators are. By nature, technical content translation is complicated and even a tiny error may result in a huge mistake at the latter point. Therefore, it is good practice to check how stringent the quality control measures taken by the translation services which are providing it. Next is medical translation. Medical translation involves any medical content that is patient related like labels, packaging instructions or software and content that is product related like research papers, clinical trial paperwork, quality management certificates and the like. Usually these needs translation. It is absolutely imperative that the translation service providers are experienced, have requisite knowledge, and are in country professionals. Translation of medical documents can also be very tricky, as the requirements of general translation can differ from country to country. A kind of translator or company specialized in medical documents would be the best, as they would be familiar with the intricacies of the different requirements. Next is script translation. Script translation is vital nowadays because of many popular movies and TV shows coming out of Hollywood and being dubbed into several languages and released worldwide. Sometimes the films are more foreign languages and dubbed into English and other European languages, like the Telugu language blockbuster Bahubali, which was released in Chinese and German among other languages. The Harry Potter series was also released into dozens of languages, but for these releases to happen, the scripts have to be translated first and the dialogues. This is a type of literary translation, but it's not exactly the same. It can be very dicey, as translating punchlines, jokes, or catchy phrases into other language to make the same impact is very difficult. With more movies being released in multiple languages nowadays, this type of translation is very much in demand today. Next is financial translation. Financial translation is about financial documents like bank records, statements, account statements, and more, which sometimes need to be translated to make it easier for the target audience to comprehend. Here, the actual content that one needs to translate may be lesser, but it has to be done precisely. One may also be required to change the currencies, in which case there would be a need to also convert the figures. Next is commercial translation. Commercial translation is kind of translation that necessitates type of translators who possess specialized skills like knowledge of the business jargon and the industry to which the business belongs. The types of text in the translation of commercial documents should include business correspondence, reports, tender documents, company documents, and memos, and so on. Sometimes this could overlap with legal translation if the company handles legal paperwork. Next is software localization. Of course, in software localization, the main thing to translate is the user interface, but software localization does not end there. It includes error messages, system messages, help files, and so on. At times, the translator may be faced with the prospect of internationalization. Take a product like Coca-Cola, which is available almost everywhere in the world. The company will need to have their website in multiple languages, and rather than create multiple websites which would cost a ton of money, it would make more sense to have a software handle several languages and allow the user to translate the page into a language of their choice. If one goes to Wikipedia searching for info on anything, he will notice the choice of languages displayed on the left. The localized software may incorporate numerous practical and linguistic issues. Hence, it is vital that it is thoroughly tested before releasing. Reputed translation services companies also often have a multiple language testing centers to test localized software. Next is judicial translation. When we talk about judicial translation, we basically refer to the activity of translating court documents like depositions, minutes of meetings, expert testimonies, witness testimonies, judgments, letters, interviews, and more. Basically, invited related to cases. Yes, the nature and scope of this type of translation is different from legal translation. Although both are related translation types, the latter is about translating legal documents which could be very old too. Next is administrative translation. In a realm of translation, administrative refers to the translation of management text we often see being used in organizations, whether huge corporations or regional businesses. Though pretty similar to commercial transaction, it is not exactly the same. While administrative translation can be called a subset of commercial translation, all commercial translation is not necessarily administrative. Next is website translation. This is about website copy, subtitles for videos on your web pages, and any documents that is there. Here one will also need to change things like currencies, address formats, and layouts so as to appeal to the different local audiences. One needs to think about the languages he wants the website to be translated into and localize only those pages which will apply to the target audience. Using a website translation management system to automate and ease the process if one has frequent updates to website copy. And last is the multimedia localization. Videos, graphics, animations, GIF, infographics, all this can be grouped into multimedia localization. This is very important today as more and more companies are getting multimedia content to widen their audience reach and keep them engaged. Localizing this content can get tricky, though it may look simple from the outside, as it has to be appropriate for the local culture and appeal to the customers in that region. If it is not done correctly, it could end up offending the audience and drive them away. Now let's discuss about the semantic translation categories, objects, events, abstraction and relation. Semantics is the study of meaning, reference or truth. The term can be used to refer to subfields of several distinct disciplines including linguistics, philosophy and computer science. Semantic translation means that the central concern of the translation is to convey the meaning of phrase and sentence according to normal. Semantic translation attempts to render as closely as the semantic and syntactic structures of the second language allow the exact contextual meaning of the original. Semantic translation has a source language bias. It is literal and the loyalty is to be the source language author. It is readable but remains with the original culture and assists the reader only in its connotations if they constitute the essential message of the text. It tends to be more complex, more awkward, more detailed, and tends to over translate. It is more specific than the original in transferring nuances of meanings. Semantic translation relates to the word or the word group. Semantic translation differs from faithful translation, such as it takes more account of the aesthetic value of the source language text, compromising on the meaning where appropriate so as to no assertions, wordplay, or repetition jars in the finished version. The distinction between faithful and semantic translation is that the first is uncompromising and dogmatic, while the second is more flexible, admits the creative exception and 100% fidelity, and allows for the translator's intuitive empathy with the original. Now let's discuss about the semantic objects. Semantic object can mean the psychological object of the clause if it's different from grammatical object. Grammatical subject is the actual object that is determined by the syntax, not the meaning. It is complement of the transitive verb. Semantic object is a constituent that is not syntactically object but is perceived an object by the speakers. The semantic role of this kind of constituent is often present. It is important to note that semantic roles are different from the constituents of the clause. Grammatical object is often present but not always, and present can be object but it doesn't need to be one. Let's take the example. Grammatical object is noun phrase allowing verb usually. Semantic object will be equal to recipient of action of verb. As mentioned in modern linguistic theory, this last is referred as a patient. For example, I ate a cookie. A cookie is both a noun phrase following the verb ate and the recipient of the action of eating. It is easy to conflate the syntax and semantic here, but it's not always the case that the two are conterminous. Passive is a simple example demonstrating this. A cookie was eaten by me. Here there is no grammatical object following the verb phrase was eaten, rather we have a prepositional phrase by me. The erstwhile grammatical object a cookie is now in the subject position, also seen by its agreement with was. However, it is clearly still the recipient of the action of eating. Therefore, it retains its semantic object but not its grammatical object status. What are semantic events? Donald Davidson, in his seminal work in 1967, said the original form of action sentences says that the events are spatial temporal things, that is, concrete particulars with a location in space and time. This understanding was proven to be a great benefit in explaining numerous combinational and inferential properties of natural language expressions. Most prominent among them have been the progress made in the theoretical description of word semantics, including tense and aspect, and the breakthrough in analyzing adverbial modification. Semantic abstraction. The term abstraction has a number of uses in the field of linguistics. It can denote a process, also called object abstraction, in the development of language, whereby terms become used for concepts further removed from the object for which they were originally attached. Object abstraction is simply abstraction is a concept wherein terms of objects become used to more abstract concept which is more language developed into further abstractions such as verbs and grammatical words in common in human language. Though it manifests in different ways for different languages, in language acquisition, children have typically learn object word first and then develop them that vocabulary and understanding of the alternate uses of such words. For example, the word books refers objectively to a physical object constructed with bound pages, but in abstraction refers to a particular literary creation. Regardless of how many physical copies of the book there are, it is one book. The word book then developed more abstract uses, such as in keeping a record or to keep a record of betting, or as a verb of entering persons into a record. Words may then be further abstracted and even have embedded punctuations, such as to make history of oneself. What are semantic relations? Semantic relations are the associations that there exist between the meanings of words, between the meanings of phrases, or between the meanings of sentences. Following is a description of such relationships. Semantic relationship at word level. At word level, we have semantic relationships like synonymy, autonomy, homonymy, polysemy, and metonymy. Semantic relationships at phrase or sentence level. At phrase or sentence level, we have paraphrase, entailment, and contradiction. Now let's discuss about lexical ambiguity, words with complex structures, TG grammar, and translation referential meaning. Lexical ambiguity. Lexical ambiguity is the presence of two or more possible meanings for a single word. It also called semantic ambiguity or homonymy. It differs from syntactic ambiguity, which is the presence of two or more possible meanings within the sentence or sequence of words. Lexical ambiguity is sometimes used deliberately to create punctuations and other types of wordplay. Depending on the relationship among the alternative meanings available for a particular word from lexical ambiguity has been categorized as either polysemous when meaning are related or homosemous when unrelated. Context and characteristics are important to understand lexical ambiguity. Now, what is context? Context is very relevant. For example, they passed the port at midnight is lexically ambiguous. However, it could normally be clear in a given context, which is of two homonyms, that is, port, harbor, or port, kind of fortified wine, is being used, and also which sense of the polysemous verb pass is intended. Characteristics. The following example illustrates two important characteristics of lexical ambiguity. The plane banked just before landing, but then the pilot lost control. The strip on the field runs for only the barest of yards, and the plane just twisted out of the turn before shooting into the ground. First, that this passage is easy to understand in spite of the fact that all of its content words are ambiguous, meaning that ambiguity will not require a special resource demanding processing mechanisms but rather is understood by normal comprehension. Second, there are a number of ways in which a word can be ambiguous. The word plain, for example, has several noun meanings and it can also be used as a verb. The word twisted could be an adjective and is also morphologically ambiguous between the past tense and participle forms of the verb to twist. Now let's discuss about the words with complex structures. Words are the basic building blocks of sentence. Most words are a pairing of sound and meaning, and the meaning of the sentence is computed on the basis of the meanings of the constituent words, the way in which they are combined. For a word to be considered complex, we expect a systematic correspondence between its form and meaning. Definition of complex words. A word made up of two or more morphemes. Complex words consist of one free morpheme, that is, a standalone word element, and one or more bound morpheme, word element that cannot stand alone. The complex word is the root word with either another standalone word or with the attachment of a prefix or suffix. For example, lock plus able is equal to lockable, or un plus lock is equal to unlock. Complex word may consist of a base or root and one or more affixes or more than one root in compound. A morphologically complex word is semantically transparent if its meaning is obvious from its parts. Hence, unhappiness is semantically transparent, being made up in the predictable fashion from un and happy and ness. A word like department, even though it contains recognizable morphemes, is not semantically transparent. The meaning of depart in department is not obviously related to the depart in departure. It is semantically opaque. Complex word is a word consisting of the base and one or more derivational elements, unlikely, vitality, wit, all, it. In origin and structure type, there are four kinds of complex word in English. First is vernacular, formed on native principles but including some long established words of Latin, Greek, and French background. Darkness, womanhood, beefly, priestly. Such words may have equivalents in the Germanic languages, English, unmanly, German, unmanlich. Next is Romance, Latin. Found on Latinate principles, many such words are structurally identical or similar in English and the Romance languages. English impossible, discrimination, French impossible, discrimination, Spanish impossible, discrimination. Next is Greek. Found on principles adopted from classical Greek through Neo Latin. Many such words are structurally similar in English and Greek. English dogmatic magnetism, Greek dogmatikos, magnetomos. Next is hybrid. A mix of the above uncreative mixes vernacular, unlike Latin cre and eative. Ethically mixes Greek eth and ic with Latin all and vernacular ly. Now let's discuss about TG grammar and translation. Transformational grammars is a theory of grammar that accounts for the constructions of a language by linguistic transformations and phrase structures. It is also known as transformational generative grammar or TG or TGG. In linguistics, transformational grammar or transformational generative grammar is part of the theory of generative grammar, especially of natural languages. It considers grammar to be a system of rules that generate exactly those combinations of words that form grammatical sentences in a given language and involve the use of defined operations to pronounce new sentences from existing ones. The method is commonly associated with American linguist Noam Chomsky. Referential meaning. A referential approach in semantics is when language is used to refer to something in the world. For example, if you say I am in Lucknow, the speaker you is the referent of the word I and the referent of the word Lucknow is the city of Lucknow. There are two different types of references, constant and variable references. In the above example, I refer to the person who is speaking. This is the referent. If I said a sentence, the word I would be referring to the human Naveen. If the reader said the sentence, then I would refer to the current reader of this paragraph. Semantic analysis. In linguistics, semantic analysis is the process of relating syntactic from the levels of phrases, clauses, sentences, and paragraphs of the level of writing as a whole to its their language dependent meanings. It also involves removing future specific to particular linguistic and cultural context to the extent that such a project is possible. The elements of idiom and figurative speech, being cultural, are often also converted into creative invariant meanings in semantic analysis. Semantics deals with the word or sentence choice in any given context, while pragmatic considers the unique or particular meaning derived from context or tone. To reiterate in different terms, semantics is about universally coded meanings, and pragmatics, the meaning decoded or encoded in words that is even interpreted by the audience. Now let's discuss about the translation for print media, news stories, press release, article and features. The translation of media content, literature and marketing requires talent and skills that are almost opposite of those required for technical, legal, medical or scientific translations, in which conceptual exactness and terminological expression is the key. From press releases and news articles to multimedia specifications of and digital content, a good translator should understand the media industry and ideally have extensive experience working with media organizations and understand the need for fast and accurate media translations. The translator should be organized to serve the particular needs of the industry, such as last minute changes and a quick turnaround on time sensitive projects. The following are some of media related documents that are typically required for translation: books, press releases, digital content, multimedia presentations, customer letters and invoice, brochures and other marketing materials, full press kits, news stories, TV and radio reports, corporate communications, features and articles. Media translator teams. Ideally, such translators work as teams. They have access to translation memories, dictionaries, and media specific terms, ensuring that each translation is both accurate and consistent across even the largest projects. The translator should be bound by a commercial confidentiality and corporate non disclosure agreements and take confidentiality and security issues very seriously. All translations must remain confidential. The translator should be sensitive to the nature of the underlying information of certain media communications. The other desirable qualities should be able to build team quickly to support major projects requiring fast turnarounds. The project managers should be skilled in both project planning and quality control, should be able to work with the variety of electronic file formats, should be able to accept all types of deliver ready to publish files where required. Now let's discuss about translation in the era of digital revolution. Translation as a work of art represents social, political and economic condition of India to all over the world. The primary duty of translator is to carry the essence of source language to target language. Today's technological development has replaced the translator as machine translation to meet the demands of the receivers. In the digital world, translation not comes in verbal form but as films, documents, and audio records. Language represents our culture, traditional practices, art, forms, etc. A work of art translated into another language should express the background and experience of the source text author. It is the duty of the translator to carry the nuances of the original text, whether it may be prose, poetry, novel, or any historical document. Our earlier works are translations such as Ramayana and Mahabharata. There is a vast difference between Kambar's Kambar Ramayana and Valmiki's Ramayana. Kambar made a slight change to fit the context into Tamil culture. It shows the skill of translator retaining the form of themes with slight variations. Human translator versus machine translation. The automated translation platform helps to translate the work free of cost. It consists of many languages, even the dialects of many geographical landscapes. People in business want to translate their documents. Records and medical fields has a standard term of medicine, likewise in astronomy, agriculture use translation. Today's information source and language and knowledge is nothing without translation. It opens a vast job opportunity in all fields. Translation is also like creative writing. A translator has to be creative in translating the work at the last same time conveys the message to the reader clearly. Holy scripts such as Bible and Ramayana are translated works. Ancient literary works in Tamil are translated in many languages. It is a rich in culture heritage. There lies the challenge in machine translation. How to program a computer that will understand the text as a person does and that will create a new text in the target language that sounds as if it has been written by a person. There can be two types of approaches. Shallow approaches assume no knowledge of the text. They simply apply a statistical method of the word sounding the ambiguous word. Deep approaches presume a comprehensive knowledge of the word. So far, shallow approaches have been more successful. To conclude, we can say that a translated work may lack its originality and freshness, but carry the information of culture, traditional practices, beliefs, and myths all over the world. A non residential work may be translated into native language or vice versa, where translation acts as a bridge between them to share their experience. Due to technological advancement in the field of translation, many organizations are using artificial intelligence in the form of machine translation to reduce the costs of translation. Artificial intelligence enables automated translation platforms such as Microsoft Translator, Google Translate, and the recently released Amazon Translate have in the last 24 months take us to the great leap forward in the accuracy. Miscommunication can lead to loss of reputation, legal exposure, physical harm, or even industrial disasters. For this reason, clear, accurate, and effective communication between languages, culture, disciplines, and industries is an increasing priority. In case of machine translation, its output is quite often nonsensical. The post editing commands as much lower rate than human translation. It would be widely recognized that machine translation is still nowhere near the standard of human translation, partly because computers lack the skills that make a great translator, for example, handling idioms, jokes, innuendo, or nuances. Super smart robot translators and multilingual Babelfish ear infants are therefore not on the cards for the next few years. Human translation cannot be replaced by machine translation, yet translators portray the color of life. The demand of translators is increasing. However, robots and machine translation are also gaining ground. The field of translation will flourish in order to meet the demands in all fields such as medicine, business, scientific research, archaeology, etc. In the digital age, translation also carries the information worldwide either through technology or human source. Human translator will retain the value and expresses the originality of the text. Human translation will exist in future though advancement in machine translation gains popularity. With this we come to end of today's class. I hope you gained something new. Let's meet in next class. Till then enjoy. Thank you and Jai Hind.